Well, ladies, it's another gloomy day in Winnipeg, but hey, there's a bright side. We're back at Amsterdam, and with the lovely Susie. And hey, Susie, I want you to meet my friend Pam, but I kind of think you know Pam already.
It's Winnipeg. Everybody knows everybody, and yes, there's a connection. Yeah, it's a small world.
All right, so share the story.
So we went to the same high school together. Yes,
No
and
way.
as I was saying to you, I can't remember what I went to the fridge for, but I remember that. So
It's funny.
right?
Well, and you know what? It's so nice to catch up with you too, Pam.
Yes.
I mean, the last time we chatted was a great story about your dad and you
Yes.
going to Africa.
Yes.
And telling his sort of story and finding out so much about his history. And here's the kicker. Her dad didn't know anything about this.
No.
Like, I don't know how you do a movie about your parent and they don't know, like, well.
That's a surprise.
Yeah.
That
That's a
was,
beautiful
yeah,
surprise.
2 years of little white lies, and yeah, it was very difficult. But with the support of family and friends for not saying anything, it all worked out.
Oh,
well.
yeah, I know. And they're so cute, her mom and dad.
thank
They're
you.
so cute. She had snacks and everything that day we came over for the interview, and yeah, it was just wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
But speaking of food, I just heard Mark here, the owner of Amsterdam Tea Room, has hired a new chef, Frank McCann, and he is fabulous and now open for dinner.
That is
That's
so
awesome.
exciting.
So we can come here now. We don't have to come
Yes.
during the daytime for tea.
Nice.
Always
Yeah.
more places to go in the exchange in downtown. I'm all for it. That's wonderful.
I know, and hey, well, it is winter, and what? I mean, less than a month till Christmas.
Oh my
I know.
goodness.
Oh my gosh.
Your kids obviously getting excited.
TikTok, yes, yes. They did wait till the first to open their advent calendars, though, so I consider that a win. That's
Oh
pretty
my
good.
God! Oh, I can't remember the last time I bought one of those, but
I know.
Yes.
Yeah, they're still. I have three little elves, right? So I have one who's still really enamored with Santa. Yes.
Really?
Two are kind of too cool, but they're going to play it up for their sister, which I
Yeah.
appreciate.
Nice.
Well, that's always the question, though. At what age? Or is it just a magical age?
Hint:
Is
if
it-
children are watching, take them out of the
Oh,
room
yeah.
now. Yes.
yes, and then there's like distraught parents going, no. But it's, I guess, always magical, though, too. Right?
It can be, yes. It's what
It
you make
is.
it, and I think
is.
you know.
And just the wonder in their little faces is so
Oh, yes.
special and so sweet. So I really enjoy it.
Yes, and just wait till they get older. And
I know.
but that's a whole other story.
Yes.
But you know what, Pam? I think we had a coffee the other day,
Yes.
and finding out more about you and what you're doing now is so cool. So
thank you.
I'm going to hold up this beautiful piece of jewelry, Angel
Thank
Wings
you.
and 911, and I think that's as close as we can get right now. But it's beautiful. So
Thank you.
let's talk about what you're doing now and what 911 for 911 is all about.
Okay, well, thank you. The jewelry itself is called the Invisible Heroes Collection, and it was made to kind of imitate or represent guardian angel wings. That's what the wings mean. And it's like we're there 24/7 but rarely seen.
Right.
And so the whole thing that the wings are embracing 911 is for all the 911 community, whether they be the dispatchers, call takers. It's grown to mean more for losing fallen members, whether it be police, fire, paramedics, and so much more than that as well. So that's basically what that was. It was my acknowledgement, my thanks to the people that I worked alongside with for so many years and who I don't feel get a lot of recognition or support sometimes. So that's why that was created. 911 for 911 is a business style that I've started that is, again, in hopes of supporting the 911 community, whether it be with consulting or training that I have with, that I've done with respect to vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. There's so much that's being said about post-traumatic stress for the frontline officers, but we behind the scenes can experience trauma as well, and that's where they call it vicarious trauma, because it's the second hand where you hear a lot but you don't actually see what's going on. But after, some nights, it's just call after call, years after years of hearing the screams, the distress, the anger. It can wear on a person, and sometimes it takes a long time to realize that it's actually affecting you. I was one that always said, oh no, the job is great. I love it. It's not stressful. It doesn't affect me. It took me to quit my job and step away from it for a bit to actually realize when I started researching the topics for a talk I was doing, to make me realize that, oh yeah, you know what, some of these are symptoms that I was experiencing, didn't realize it, and didn't know enough to speak up at the time. So I just want to be able to provide support to people to know that there's other people out there, that they are not alone, and that it's okay to ask for help, because there used to be such a stigma around, you know, about something like that. So, excuse me. So I just want to be able to help in that way.
And it's something that I had never really thought about, right? Until she started talking about it, and then I go, oh, yes. And then it's just like not even like, it expands so much now too. I mean, we were talking about hospitals, and then it even just spreads into, you know, even call centers. Regular call centers getting angry customers and always being like on the front lines of getting the abuse, and they're just like, sorry.
Well, and I guess with your particular example too, you might have helped somebody, but you'll never hear that part of the story, right? So that you're left in constant state of cliffhanger, and you don't know what happened, if everyone was okay. And I could see how that would be like, you know, you're always thinking about that one call that week that you got, and did something ever happen? And I guess because of privacy reasons too, you'll never find out the answer. So.
Yeah, a lot of times you don't. You just constantly go from call to call, whereas, you know, the officers or, you know, firefighters, paramedics who are on the scene, they sort of see things from beginning to end. We don't. Once we're done with the call, we go on to the next one. And there's a lot of times that it's, you know, like the book, you don't get the last 2 chapters of the book and you're kind of left hanging. And yeah, there are times that we don't know the outcome or exactly what happened, and we walk out while they're still dealing with stuff, and you come back and you just jump right back in, and you don't have time to think about a lot of stuff.
And so are there other areas and jurisdictions that have sort of supports in place for these types of workers, or is this kind of a new thing altogether?
Well, I think it's becoming more recognized and more prevalent now. There are some services now that are acknowledging that their telecommunicators, 911 operators, are experiencing trauma such as this, and are providing resources, whether it be a police psychologist that they have on staff, or opening it up through like Blue Cross. You can go and get support through your health insurance if they have. And some I know down in the States a lot are bringing in speakers as well, and really supporting their employees that way by bringing people in to talk about it and to come up with solutions and stuff, so that they can kind of reach it before it gets to that critical point. So yeah, there's a lot out there, and it's just me wanting to use my experiences to help others, because sometimes, and you know, all the power to the people who are doing it. Sometimes they're not actually from the field, they haven't worked in it. They're more of the psychiatrist, psychologist side of things, who don't sometimes understand.
The first-hand experience?
Right, what we go through. I don't have the medical, like the IST I said behind my name of anything like that, but I've got 20 years of frontline experience, and can go from that, saying this is what I experienced in this type of situation. You might feel this too, and know that you're not alone that way, as opposed to having somebody say, oh, you know, you will feel this, you will feel that, you know,
so
maybe.
What are some of the first symptoms that you see, or even you experienced with this?
Yeah, it's, you know, we always say that we become very cynical, thick-skinned on the job, but I think some of the main ones would be, if you stop going out with friends or family, you just want to stay inside.
Taking yourself out of social situations?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. Doing that, you just, like I said, I just wanted to go back into my darkened bubble world, to my house with the blinds closed, the phones turned off, and just be by myself. Come up with excuses. Oh, I need to wash my hair. I've got a headache, when somebody calls to go out. And, you know, and then slowly as that time goes on, then the calls stop coming, because you always say no. In family functions, you find that it's really hard to get yourself out of the house to go to a family event, whether it be a birthday, you know, wedding, Christmas coming, and you just kind of, you know, see that you're sitting there, but you're not a part of things.
Now, are you thinking of the job, or you just become distant?
You just become you could be, depending on, if you were on shift or if you just had a really bad shift. A lot of times, everybody asks.
How do you switch that off, right?
You don't, it just constantly plays. It's the movie in your mind.
If you're walking out of a shift and you have to go pick up kids or get groceries or look after a parent, I mean, how do you just stop that from playing in your head over and over again, right?
Yes.
I can definitely see.
Yeah,
of course,
and you don't want to tell, you ask your spouse, your friend, your family member, how was your day?
Right.
And when I say a regular job, they tell you about your day. When they say, how was your day? You don't want to go into the details of what you've just heard or, witnessed or anything like that, because it's just not something that you want to expose them to. Right. And so you just kind of sit there and you don't talk, you just, oh, how is work? Fine.
Yeah.
And you don't want to give the details of anything. Sometimes you can't for privacy reasons.
Of course.
But other times you just don't want to let them know how devastating your shift actually was. Yeah. And then, if you find yourself kind of stepping back and not becoming emotional in situations where if there's something that you're watching, a movie or a show on TV that's really gruesome, and everybody around you is kind of going like, oh, and you're just kind of like, oh, yeah, well, I've heard and seen worse.
Yeah.
Little things like that are triggers.
Desensitization and things like that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those can be starting signals as well. But, it can go so much deeper than that too. And with people, no two people are the same.
Right.
So one person might be experiencing this, another person, it might be affecting them in some, in some other way where they're acting more aggressive, or, they're turning to alcohol or, the softer drugs or something like that to just
to medicate.
Yeah, and just kind of go mellow. The sleep patterns, of course, too. And when you sleep, if you're having a lot of nightmares, we say that sometimes there's triggers too, and you get hypersensitive and hyper aware of certain things, especially if you've had a traumatic event. If you're driving somewhere and there's one place in the city here that does it for me every time I walk by or drive by it, the first thing I think automatically is about a call that happened there and something that happened with that specific location. I acknowledge and then I'm fine, and it just moves on. But every single time, no matter how many times, I'm not going to do it this time, it's the first thing that comes. So it could be something, and it could be something else. It could be, a house fire that somebody was on the phone with, and they drive by, and that's, automatically what they think of. It could be something else. And, there's certain events that happen that I can, close my eyes and I'm taken right back into the room, and I can see everybody who was there. I know where they are. I can hear things. I can remember exactly how certain things are. And those are big signs too that, there's a lot going on. Yeah.
Wow. So how have you managed? Or, stepping away from the job and starting yourself anew.
Yeah.
But you will always have the job.
Oh, absolutely.
On your mind.
Yes. Oh, yes. It absolutely will always stay with me when you hear things. I always think about the people behind the scenes as well. You hear a lot in the media about, you see and you hear like the fires and a lot of stuff that goes down in the States too, as well as here. But my first thought is always to the people who are taking the calls and how many calls they've had to hang up on people or what they're hearing, and their homes, their families might be affected, but they have to stay strong and they have to keep going on. For myself, the big thing, like stepping away, was a huge, huge decision for me. That was my life for 20 years. That was my family for 20 years. But leaving there, then it was just taking time to decompress and just realizing that I needed to just take, a couple months, 4 months is pretty much what I did, to just not do anything and not worry about it. I just, went on a road trip and just kind of try not to think about things and just accept that life is taking a new step and then going from there. And then it was just reconnecting with people and just finding the positives and things. I've always tried to stay positive, think of the positive things in life, like doing stuff for my dad like that, and the gratitude, just an attitude like that of being thankful for what I have, considering you see a lot of the sad side of society in this job. But then it's just finding out what I really liked doing again and my passions, and being creative and travel and slowly going out and being around people again, and realizing that, you know what, I can start to follow my own path again, and just go out and start enjoying life and staying connected with some people on the job there, just as friends, and just being there for them as well, but realizing that no, they can get on without me. It hasn't stopped since I walked out the room. The room still runs.
Yes.
And there's more to life than the job, especially if it's starting to take a toll on you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I did.
I mean, although you definitely stepped away from a very stressful job, but I think that holds for a lot of people, right? Unhappy in what they're doing, and how it affects you.
Yeah, and I think, like Pam said, is that once it starts to take a toll on life outside of work, I think you have to do a bit of a reevaluation and see, if there's a way to distance yourself from that, or turn a different corner and maybe take a new path.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that, and that life is, about taking, different ways to your journey, and you have to do what works for you, really. Right?
That's exactly it. And sometimes it takes a while because it's a habit, it's a routine, it's what that you do year after year after year. And for me, it took probably a good 8 months for me to decide that was the route I was going to take and step away from the job. It's security, good paying job, you've got benefits, you have a pension. Yes. Nowadays you don't know what you're getting, and to walk away from a lot of that was...
It was hard.
It was, and that was a lot, what a lot of people commented on was, and I'm like, what, life's not all about money and benefits.
Right. If you're not healthy enough to enjoy it.
Exactly,
yes.
exactly.
And I think it's interesting too, because we're now at that point sort of in life and in work that these mental health issues are taking more of a forefront, which is great, because I try to think, how did people do it 20 years ago?
Yes.
And 30 years ago? They never said anything, or we never thought about it, and they thought it was them.
Yes.
So now I think it's wonderful that there are supports and organizations in place and processes in place to help people manage and deal with whatever trauma or issue they're facing in the workplace. And I think that will only become more stronger and help the workforce in the long run, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times, too, people would say, years ago too, is if you can't do, suck it up. If you were feeling something, or whether it be my job or somebody else's job, if something happened and you got emotional or it affected you somehow, it was the old, suck it up, buttercup. If you can't do it, go somewhere else.
Yes. Or go somewhere else.
But it's just realizing that whatever job you're doing, it doesn't affect people the same way it might affect you. So they might be experiencing things differently, and than you are, and you have to realize that everybody's not the same cookie out of the cutter there. Everybody's different, and
and that there is no such thing as suck it up, because the trauma has to go somewhere,
right?
So whether we deal with it now or later, it's just going to manifest itself in different and more destructive ways.
Yes.
So
right?
Is it a different set of rules for men as opposed to women? Probably at your job, though, it's probably more women, I would think.
As a 911, there was the majority of females. But I think for male-wise, it was because the majority at the time were men on the street and officers.
On the front line.
And even years ago when I started, it was for them too. It was that stigma of, we've always had a police psychologist on staff. But if, people found out, the big burly guy was going to go and, have a meeting, they got kind of ridiculed and, and all that. And it's now, again, it's taken years, but slowly now it's realizing for them as well that it's okay for guys to ask for help. But I think it was hard for a lot of them too, because, they're on the front lines, they're the ones carrying the guns, and yes, totally is I can't be weak, I've got to be the strong one.
Yeah.
I know. Well,
And
no, it's just kind of crazy. You just don't realize what stress people are under, and you look perfectly normal and healthy, but clearly, you don't know what they're feeling inside. And I think too, it's we have become desensitized, right? We can say crappy things to somebody just on our phone and send a text, or on Facebook and post, and not have to face them.
Yeah.
So having to deal with that, I think this has a lot to do with everyday life,
Oh, Absolutely, because your work affects your life no matter how you try to frame it, right? And I think that we're looking at ways to help make work more manageable and to help take away some of that stigma, no matter what workplace you're in. And I think those are all really important things that we need to look at. And whether it's the front lines, or we'd also talked about even the judicial system and legal system. There are people suffering in there as well who are just doing their jobs. And we never talked about those things before, so I think that we need to start talking. And I'm a big fan of talking. But, but when you talk about things, when you educate people on things, you give people a different perspective and an opportunity to say, "I never looked at it that way before," and that gives me a new perspective on your experience, and now I see what you mean.
So so front lines, and sorry, you can say no, we can't talk about it, but we were just talking before now about a situation with your children. And now children can be on the front lines through social media, like Snapchat, or you were just mentioning Instagram, or whatever, a text of a major incident happening. So how are they now going to respond to that? Or what do we say? You kind of found out
I never thought I would have to have that conversation, but I guess I'm having it today with my children. So, so the story is that a school division just outside the city was shut down today for some online threats that were made. And in the car today, as we were listening to the radio, I happened to ask my child, "Did you hear about this?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I heard about it on Snapchat last night." I was in the middle of my drive and I was just like, what? So this child went to bed with the knowledge that these threats were out there, and I said, "Well, did you think to tell anybody, i.e. me, i.e. the police, RCMP, anything?" But of course they're young, they don't understand the effects of these things, right? They don't have that ability to think that far ahead. And so when we get home from school today, we're gonna have a conversation about what happens when you see these things on social, and how you need to take it to a parent or a grown-up, and that needs to be reported and or managed from an adult perspective, right? Now, my child is 13, and I didn't think I would need to have that conversation. But again, me, even living this social media life, now I'm seeing just how far this is reaching, right? And how we need to prepare our kids, again, with education and knowledge about passing it on to a grown-up. They don't have to carry that burden necessarily, but again, even just seeing that that's out there, knowing that a school could be under attack with threats, whether it's verbal or physical, that's a scary thing. That is not something that we ever dealt with as children. So, these kids are, again, dealing with that kind of I guess secondary trauma, it's not as if they're dealing with it firsthand, but then you also think, are they a little bit desensitized to it? Because he was just like, well, I'm sure somebody else is going to deal with it. And it's just like, whoa, wait, that bystander effect, right? So how do we teach them to be responsible and yet not feel that it's their responsibility to do everything as well?
So do you think his reaction was because he probably thought that this was like secondhand or old news, like they had whoever it was had already done?
It had been passed along, as things are on text and social. It was a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, right? And he eventually got it. But again, it's one of those things where if you're going to be on social media, as my child, you need to tell me when these things happen, because that's a traumatic thing for you to see. That's a very grown-up topic as far as I'm concerned, and that's something that we needed to be aware of.
Wow. So hopefully everything's okay. And
so the police have arrested 3 people in connection with this particular incident, but I think, again, it brings home the larger conversation of what your kids are doing online and what they're seeing online that you would never even know unless you asked.
Well, I don't know, this is kind of like, we always go all over the place, but I mean, this weekend, our family, my guys love the NFL. So the big scandal was this Kareem Hunt on the Kansas City Chiefs. He's been kicked off the team or whatever because of an altercation he had with a woman in a hotel with CCTVs, right? A hallway altercation where he physically punches her, kicks her. Now, seeing the video, she, I guess, started it by calling him out and being, yelling and whatever. But this is a full-out brawl with a woman who punches another man, who then gets punched, goes around and gets kicked.
Oh my goodness!
I'm glad
I missed that video on social media.
I don't think your kids would, but again, you could have. Well, obviously there could have been like a first responder or someone there that got the 911. And what do you do?
Right. I mean, and that's the hard part. Depending on who's the one calling, and we go on by what's told to us. So if somebody is okay, well, he just hit her without seeing that she had instigated it or something. I mean, you're in your mind, you're thinking, well, he's the one at fault, and what then. That's where it goes to coming desensitized too. Is then sometimes you think, well, she started it. Well, does she deserve it then? And I mean, and I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but these are thoughts that go through people's head.
And you're trying to fill in the scenario in your head as you're taking these details, right?
And sometimes they're not giving you all the information. So again, that's where our minds go, and we sometimes make more of it, or in our minds. But we've just got to go by what people tell us. So when the officers get there, they're the ones that are placing the puzzle pieces together, because that's all we're getting is just a little tidbit here,
and
there, or the other.
And you have to make a judgment call.
Right, and
it's life or death, or you don't know, but somebody's
How long was the video?
Oh, probably about, I don't know, it seems forever, but probably 5 minutes. But again, but this is like an NFL football player making, multi-million dollars a year.
But he wasn't kicked off the team right away, is that right?
Well, he was officially let go, I think, this weekend.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But if I'm not, okay, so I didn't see the video, but I did hear the chatter. So there was a bit of a lag, though, between that actual decision, correct? Okay.
Oh, well, of course. And I mean, and again, what message are you, well, there is no message. It's clearly, and they'll do everything to wipe it or sweep it under the carpet. And I don't know, it's just when there's no meaning to life, or there's no respect for life, then But,
and then too, it's like he's more of a public figure. He's a respected football player. Does that hold him to a higher standard? I mean, should it not? I don't know. I don't open some of these doors here too, but sometimes when you're more of a public figure too, you get scrutinized more. And
it's just that, and it goes back to the old social media and cameras everywhere.
Right.
So,
yes.
Yeah. And see, the cameras do help, because at least they can fill in, the puzzle pieces that were missing, and can give some verification to what the story was that the first line responders received. But
all right. Well, it's kind of depressing.
That's heavy.
I know. But you know what? I think, Pam, I believe in what you're doing, and I think that's so cool. And you know what? It's all about empowerment too, right? Supporting women,
knowledge, and just people in general in their workplace, and letting everyone know that we're doing things better now, and that you're not alone, and that stigma needs to be shattered. I think that's really, really important. And no matter what job you're in, there's always stresses, right?
Oh, for sure.
Some more than others, obviously, but I think what you're doing is so important and just really needed, really needed.
Yeah.
So it's 911 for number 4, 911. And thanks so much, Pam. So we're going to have a follow-up, too.
Okay,
yes,
sounds good.
And see how everything's going. But now, okay, I want to get Mark back. I want some more tea.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
To warm up a little bit.
Yes.